lead-in communicator tonight, Sue Brown from Amaltheia Dairy. And this is our virtual session on processors. And Sue, together with her husband Mel and children Sarah and Nate, run Amaltheia Dairy in Belgrade. Their dairy is a sustainable organic company that has been handcrafting organic goat cheese for over 20 years. They utilize all of their byproducts and have organic whey-fed pork to sell, as well as organic vegetables and composted manure. So Sue's agreed to lead off our conversation tonight by sharing what 2020 has been like on their farm, and what, if anything, is that experience is providing them as a guide for how they're going to lean into 2021. And the invitation is, this will start a conversation, and we invite everyone to share their experiences from their perspectives as well. Thanks, Sue.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so yes, we've been making organic goat cheese for 20 years. We try to be totally sustainable, utilizing our byproducts. We have the pork, which we got because of our whey. Whey is a byproduct of the cheese. And then with all the composted manure, my son Nate started gardens. So he has a pretty good organic garden that he sells. He sells to a couple distributors locally, and to a couple of several stores, and also farmers markets. But anyway, we started out 2021 pretty well. A lot of our business, especially with the cheese, goes to restaurants. And so as soon as April hit, Cisco and Food Service of America, which is now US Food, kind of cut down what they were selling us, or what they were buying from us, by 3/4 maybe, because the restaurants. Wow. We also do a giant business with Xanterra, which is Yellowstone and Glacier Park, and they didn't open, well, they really didn't open the hotels or the restaurants in the parks. So that, finding all of that out has been really difficult. One thing we did from the very beginning, from April, was we had online sales where people did set up their farm boxes, ordered online, and they could at our facility once or twice a week, and they could get vegetables, pork, and cheese. That was really helpful to us. I think it really made a big difference. But we got to a point this year where we just had a glut of cheese. In fact, we're in the process of feeding cheese, which is a organic goat cheese, which is a really high priced product, to pigs. So it's really been difficult. We did it online. We started in, I guess, middle of November, a pandemic cheese sale, we call it. We're selling 3 pounds of cheese, shipping all over the continental US, and kind of one price for 6 half-pound packages of cheese. And that has gone really well. The cheese has gone to probably every state. So we must have a pretty good following. We're pretty excited about that, but that's still, these are Band-Aids, if you know what I mean. These are Band-Aids, and we're hoping that in the next year, when everybody gets vaccinated and things come around, maybe, by April or so, we'll be back in business. But in the meantime, pork sales, because people really want to know where their food is coming from, and it's, certified organic pork. Pork sales have been great. Vegetable sales have been awesome. Those two things have really helped us through. And you know, I guess the point is, that I'm gonna make is you can't, if you put all your chickens in one basket or your eggs in one basket, you could have a problem. And we did. So, you know, luckily we have these other things to fall back on. But it's been a tricky year in the cheese department. Are there questions?
Yeah, who do you use, Sue, to distribute through?
We use Quality Foods in Montana, and we use a company called Flathead Fish
Oh, okay.
in Cisco, Montana, and US Foods.
Okay.
Those are the ones in Montana.
I'm asking because,
Asking what?
okay. Just because I'm just wondering, I don't, if we carry you in our store, but I think we do order some of your cheeses. So I think
Oh, thank you.
my manager at our Havre store runs that. So I'm kind of out of the loop on that right now, but we'd sure. But if you sell through Quality Foods, then I'm sure we have, because I know we buy some goat cheese.
Okay, that's ours.
That's great. I'm curious about how do you manage, you know, goat milking and production if when the cheese sales don't continue? Did you have to make changes in terms of the size of your herd or anything like that?
No, you know, this is hopefully a temporary setback. So, you know, next year we may not keep as many replacements as we did this year. But no, we didn't cull anything, and you can't stop milking. So
right.
you just continue milking and hope for the best. So, you know, our son has done a great job with kind of fine tuning the hay that we purchase, the hay that we grow, and the grain that we purchase and the grains that we grow. So we got to quite a wonderful optimum milk production this year and last year. And that kind of wasn't good. It is great for future years, but yeah, it's bad when you have to throw out, you know, you've paid a lot of money for product input and your output is kind of tossed, you know, what you created.
Yeah.
You know,
I think some of the challenges, Sue, also enabled you to maybe test or think about some new markets. I know that the Livingston Food Pantry, I know I bought, how was it, 400 pounds of beautiful, wonderful organic goat cheese. And we had the happiest food pantry clients in America for about a week, and then it was all gone. And but you know what I'd like to do with you and other producers, farmers in Montana, is explore ways that we can work with you on a pricing and production structure that allows you a new stream of revenue from, you know, an untapped market, untapped in the past. You know, food pantries. Who thought a food pantry would be distributing organic, locally made goat cheese? And I hope the price that we negotiated on that, I hope it was a price that was good for you and for our food pantry. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Yes, Michael, starting April 1st, we donated about I don't know, between 60 and 80 8-ounce planes to our local food bank. And we've done that. We're still doing it today. And so, you know, rather than throw away the cheese, we'd rather be feeding people for sure. But it would be nice, like you helped us to get some payment. And I know MOA is working on some different things also, to try and get food to people, but also pay farmers something. You know, I'm certainly happy to provide, you know, cheese for people. And I know that that was their dairy for a lot of weeks, from co-op here.
Yeah. So just for clarity for folks, one, I put your pandemic sale link on the in the chat box here. And the project that you're talking about, Sue, is through our Montana Food Providers Project. That's a collaboration between MOA and Arrow. And so we're going to talk next week about where there are a couple of projects that we're working on where we'd love to buy the cheese and provide that through these projects to communities around the state. So we're going to explore how to figure out how to do that.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Meantime,
Sure.
you have to feel like you're doing your part to assist, to help people. And so I had, you know, I feel great about that.
Mhm.
You know, I just, there aren't very many ways you can help during this pandemic. And that was one that we felt we could do. So that was nice.
That's great. That's great. I wondered, Ashley, if you could share a little bit about your business and how things have been for you up in Havre.
Sure. So Bear Paw Meats is a 50-50 roughly retail and custom meat processing plant in Chinook. The beef that we retail are a grain-fed option. We produce the grains and the foliage on our farm, and we buy from local ranches at weaning weight to then feed them, the cattle, through, and then harvest them at our facility there in Chinook, and then we distribute them. We self-distribute. Our main places that we distribute to are Great Falls, and then we do have a store location in Havre. We have since 2020, we've increased in helping other meat processors who maybe don't have a slaughter floor and aren't state inspected. They're more custom exempt processing. They'll purchase halves and quarters through us. We'll deliver them down, and then they can sell to their customers that way. That's been working for 2020. Meat processors across the state went from kind of on the back burner, kind of a dying breed, to one of the forefront industries in the state of Montana, getting recognition and really rallying. The communities have rallied behind them. It's quite interesting from my perspective. Our custom bookings booked up through June, and we're not alone in that category. I know other processors along the High Line here are in the same boat. There's been 4, since we are a state inspected processing plant, there's been 4 meat depots that have been established in our area since May. So farmers and ranchers are really getting behind their product, and I guess the communities really are too. So it's been, I don't want to say, business has been good for us.
Mhm.
Have
A
you,
lot of, go ahead.
let's say, have you always sold like retail in your community, or did you do like commodity at first and then make the switch?
Right. So we purchased Bear Paw Meats. My parents, Carla and Dexter Buck, are the ones who purchased the meat processing plant with the probably 12 to 15 years ago. And they did it with the sole retail is hard because, you know, for us, we have to background and feed out it takes about a year. And so for the cash flow on a processing plant, you really want that custom. So we started out with probably a 90% custom plant, 10% retail. And since, you know, but it's been 12 years. Now we're more 50-50 or even 60-40 on our retail to custom.
That's the processing end of it. Or you were mentioning, do you raise your own cattle that you then put through that processing, or do you buy in the cattle, or you're just saying it's by the job?
Oh, Todd, I'm sorry. It was kind of cutting out. I think, so you're just gonna have to, if I'm not answering your question right. So we purchase cattle at weaning weight from local ranchers. And then we background them and finish them off on a grain that we produce on our farm. So we have the farm, which produces the foliage and the grain, and then and the feedlot and the slaughter facility, but we don't have the cow calf crop.
Got it. So you're saying it takes a year to finish. You buy in cattle, it takes you a year to finish them, and then you process.
Yeah, I mean, roughly, because you're buying in at weaning weight, which is around, 400 to 500 pounds, and you're growing that animal to about 1,300 pounds. So, it takes a while to background them and then finish them off, and the process is slow. Yeah, because you're looking at a 6 month to 8 months. So you're a 9 to 12 months is what you're looking at.
Yeah, it just seems like with the meat industry, it's almost like there's been a lag. Like vegetable growers have been doing direct to consumer for a long time, and it seemed like just the past year or two, and in the future, it seems like cattle producers have really caught on to the direct to consumer as a alternate market. And it seemed like there was that big grant. I don't know if you were part of that big grant this summer that came out to meat processors. Seemed like a big investment from the state, or was that, I don't know if that was state or federal. I guess that was federal.
Yeah, so that was a federal, but it was distributed through the Department of Agriculture. Yeah, we were a part of that grant. That catapulted a lot of us with equipment purchases. We did some rewiring we needed in our facility. So we used that to just really improve our infrastructure. And then we did purchase some equipment with that it sped up our processes. And yeah, I agree with you. The direct sale, like I said, the whole meat processing industry in the state of Montana, I mean, it was a dying business, really. And in the last year, it has really turned around.
Mhm. And Michael, what's been your experience with getting access to local food, locally produced food in this year, or in in the relationships you've had with local producers?
We've been pursuing as many sources as possible around the state. The foundational principle for our food pantry is to source locally, to create new markets for Montana producers, Montana farmers and ranchers, and use the money that we spend buying food for distribution in our pantry through those channels so that we keep that money in our local economy, support our local farmers, therefore support our local food system. And I think, and I hope it is a long-lasting revelation that will come from this whole pandemic crisis that we're suffering through, is that people generally have a better understanding and appreciation for where their food comes and the need for developing and strengthening local food systems, and stop pretending that a local food system is the Cisco truck pulling into town a couple times a week. I think it's being demonstrated that, in fact, that's not a local food system. And I go back to the spring when we opened. We have been the only bakery or only food pantry in Montana that bakes its own bread for distribution in its food pantry. And the bread that we make is made with Montana grown wheat and grain and flour. It's all milled in Montana. It's all organic. So the people who come in the Livingston Food Pantry are getting the best bread nutritionally and quality-wise that's available to anybody, regardless of the price. And we were in a position that the demand for our bread outside of the food pantry, with people in Livingston who would come to the Food Resource Center and want to buy our bread. So in the spring, in March, actually in February, I opened a bakery across the street from the Food Resource Center, a full-on bakery. And then, of course, like everybody, 2 weeks later, we got shut down with the lockdown. But in this bakery, which is now operating again, we're baking not just wonderful whole wheat sandwich bread made with kamut flour grown up around Big Sandy. We're making artisan breads and baguettes and everything else you can imagine. And the revenues from those sales are coming right back into our organization. We are now, in my projections, I optimistically projected a 12-month break even. And when we got the bakery reopened on June 9th of this year, we reached break even in 4 months. And that means that in 4 months, we have generated revenues back into the bakery, back into our organization, that have supported 4 new jobs and a pretty decent market for Montana farmers and millers. And the week after lockdown, you could not go into a grocery store in Livingston and buy a sack of flour.
Mm-hmm.
Shelves were empty.
Mm-hmm.
But in that same week, Quality Food Distributors was bringing down for us a pallet, 2,000 pounds of whole wheat flour
Mm-hmm.
that we used in our bakery. So it's not that the flour, that the food is not available. We've got to figure out creative ways to bring that food to market And when I say creative, I'm an old corporate capitalist, so I don't look at anything that doesn't pencil out. And, so our bakery now pencils out. It's supporting all the food, the bread that we're baking and we're distributing in our food pantry. And we are now making the same whole wheat bread available to every food pantry in Montana at no cost. So we've got bread every week going to West Yellowstone, to Gardner, to White Sulphur Springs, to Ballantyne, you name it, for food pantries that used to depend on the bread that their local grocery stores was about to throw away because it was old and moldy. And, Wonder Bread isn't any good the day it's baked. From a nutritional standpoint, of course, I know I grew up on it, like a lot of people, but so, what we're all about is finding ways to source from farmers. I'd encourage every farmer I talk to in Montana, call me in January. Let's do a forward contract. If you're going to grow broccoli this year, I want to buy 1,000 pounds of your broccoli. And I'll commit to a price that is good for you and good for us, and everybody wins. We've got a new market for the farmer. We're distributing wonderful organic broccoli in our food pantry to people who normally don't have access to that kind of good food. We're minimally processing that. We're creating jobs there, so it's a win-win-win situation. And that's how we've got, I think, to think about how we build a local food system. You've probably seen there was a video done for a governor's conference on agriculture maybe 10 years ago. But when I first got involved with the food pantry, I met a very smart lady from the Montana Department of Agriculture, Nancy Matheson, who wrote a paper on food consumption in Montana and the history of food. And in her paper, she points out that up into the 1950s, 1960, 75% of the food that Montanans ate was grown, processed, and distributed in Montana. And today, that's about 5%. When the railroads began to dominate food distribution, we became a commodity export state agriculturally. We talk about how agriculture is such a large, important part of our state economy. Well, fine and dandy, but it doesn't help feed the people of Montana. We put everything on train cars and send it somewhere else to be processed and shipped overseas or whatever. Then we have to buy food back to feed ourselves. And to me, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So we need Todd and Sue and Ashley and everybody else to be part of this equation, not working on and talking about, government subsidies and what have you. We need to be talking about economic development that is based on food production, processing, and distribution in our state. So can I hear an amen?
Oh,
Yeah. Hey, Michael.
Amen.
I'll get off my soapbox, but what we try to do, Robin, is source as much as possible. And, like the model we're using for the bread, I'm researching using for fresh produce, vegetables. I want a vegetable processing line in our building that brings in, again, I'll pick on broccoli, brings in thousands of pounds of fresh organic broccoli, minimally processes it, makes it available to people in our food pantry, also to other food pantries around the state at no cost, and support all of that by selling it at retail in some fashion through frozen CSA programs, whatever it takes. And we've got to get creative.
I have a question for you. I find it really interesting that what you're able to accomplish through the food pantry, it's like most communities can't even accomplish that through like for-profit businesses. Do you think there's anything unique about your situation? Like, it seems almost counterintuitive that a food pantry would be able to link all these things together, and yet businesses on their own can't seem to do that.
Yeah, Todd, I recognize that situation. We're very lucky here in Livingston. The food pantry in Havre couldn't do what we do. But what I'm suggesting is that there is opportunity in Livingston, in Kalispell, in other markets to create this, let's call it a multiplier effect, an economy of scale that, the bread I'm buying, I pay for the bread we make that whole wheat, that bread, I pay for the flour, and I make bread that we have generated revenue streams to support so that we can make it available at no cost to Havre and White Sulphur Springs and other pantries. So what I'm saying is we've got to identify those opportunities and develop them. There's like, last estimate I saw was like 60,000 food pantries in America, 60,000. If half of them who are buying food would spend just $1,000 a month with local farmers in their area. Think about that. 30,000 food pantries spending $1,000 a month. That comes to what, $360 million a year of a brand new market for small local farmers. So we've got to think about, we've got to get creative about this, because right now, Todd, most food pantries, out of need, out of whatever, depend solely on donated food. And what happens is the food they end up with is typically ultra processed factory food that Cisco might drop off, and they're distributing that food to people who are living in poverty, struggling with food insufficiency, and a whole lot more than just food insufficiency. We know through research we've done in our pantry that 40% of the people we serve are diabetic. Half have high blood pressure and some form of heart disease. So if all I'm doing in our food pantry is distributing this ultra processed factory food, what am I doing, Todd?
Mhm.
I'm just making people sicker.
Mhm.
Well, I would argue your success is primarily due to the fact that you are championing the cause and you're being creative. I think a lot of the food pantries in the country don't do what they do out of necessity. I think they do it because that's just the mindset of what they should do. And you seem to be reimagining what's possible. So hopefully there's other food pantries. I mean, do you hear from other food pantries looking to mimic and learn from you, or do you feel like you're kind of the lone wolf?
Well, it depends on the time of day, Todd. But no, I think, what we're doing here, again, before I got involved with the food pantry in Livingston, I had not a moment's worth of experience in a food pantry or a nonprofit of any kind. I was a corporate bottom line driven, capitalist warmonger, as my young son used to refer to me as. Um, but I think there's opportunity in every food pantry to begin to look at the model. The food pantry in Livingston was precisely the usual model. Raise a little money, go out, buy as much cheap food as you can, pass it out to people in need, get up tomorrow, start over, do the same thing.
Yep.
And so when we began to do the research and look at the root causes, well, the first thing we discovered was that the real issue we were dealing with is not hunger, it's poverty. And you can't just feed people out of poverty. We could pass out free food 24/7. People would be right back in line tomorrow, hungry again and still living in poverty. So we haven't had much of a real impact, have we? We haven't really accomplished anything other than buy a box of Band-Aids and stick it on the wound and call it good. And so we started affecting change, looking for ways to have an impact in our community. We saw that virtually 100% of the people, the households who come in our food pantry are living in poverty. And the principal reason was lack of economic opportunity, lack of employment that paid a living wage. And when we did some focus groups to understand why people were not able to find work, what we saw was a lack of marketable job skills and poor health, lack of poor education and poor health, principally driven by poor diet and nutrition. So, maybe we right away, I put culinary training on the list of what we were going to do, because I know every restaurant in Park County is looking for a cook and they can't find anybody to hire. So we train those people now, but they've got to be well enough, feel good enough, have the energy to come to class and then to show up for work. Mm-hmm. And they're not going to do that if we're just feeding them again this ultra processed cheap factory food. So it goes, it goes round and round.
I see that. We see that. My mom is really a big proponent for the school systems, farm to school program, beef in particular with us. But yeah, she works hard to get high quality beef into schools to feed the minds of our children, rather than the cheapest thing that these schools can find. The schools
Yeah, I think maybe
you're just lighting all these passionate fires, Michael. Oh, yeah, I'm here. Sorry, you just sparked all this because you're talking my language, and I just love hearing what you're saying.
Yeah.
Not everybody does, Ashley. I have a penchant for pissing people off when I get going. So
I wondered, Michael, if I could return into a comment that Todd made. This curiosity about, because it is, it's quite impressive what this. It feels like you've pulled the ripcord on an engine here. But why some communities that, and I'm not necessarily talking about a food pantry model, but just community businesses that are community efforts to try to get local economies going. I'm curious about this multiplier effect. You called it economies of scale and a revenue generator. How communities, what is the mindset shift you think that is important in order to support a community, even through for-profit business models, successfully stacking these enterprises, if you will, at the community level.
You think investment is the biggest issue? Or no? Capital to do it?
I'm having, pardon me, I'm having a difficult time hearing everything you're saying, but the model, Robin, for food pantries in general, I think has to become one that, as I regard nonprofits in general, first of all, I'll tell you, I think there's way too many nonprofits in this country. And I don't think as taxpayers who pay taxes that we demand nearly enough of them in return for their tax exempt status. I mean, I'm looking at a screen full of people who are working very, very hard to grow and maintain businesses and create jobs and provide quality products. And I think we should, you know, and consumers, you know, if I go to Albertsons or wherever and I buy a package of Sue's, you know, organic goat cheese and it's not good and it's moldy or something when I unwrap it, I'm going to call Sue and, you know, just pound on the table. But nonprofits, many of them provide nothing in the way of good quality product, outcomes, return on that tax exempt status. All they do is maintain status quo. And if I get a little more single malt scotch in me, I'll drill into that a little deeper. You know, I don't think we demand enough of our nonprofits, as I said, and I think that nonprofits should be required to address root causes of whatever issue it is that they've been granted tax exempt status to deal with. And that each year, instead of just signing off on a Form 990 that gets mailed to the IRS, they should have to demonstrate what impact they've had on, in fact, resolving the root causes of whatever situation it is that they've been given granted tax exempt status to address. And I think nonprofits, if they're managed correctly, can be huge economic drivers. Some of them are, you know, many are, can be huge economic drivers in this country for building and supporting new businesses. You know, in our food resource center that we built in Livingston, you know, there's this commercial licensed kitchen and it's pretty well equipped. And we've started several, you know, a couple dozen new businesses in that kitchen, entrepreneurs who have come into our kitchen, started new businesses, created new jobs. I was there today in the center and had a brief meeting with one of our entrepreneurs who has started a food service business. And she's in her, I think she's just into her second year now. She started her business in our kitchen with a lot of help and support. And she now employs 5 people. And those are 5 jobs that didn't exist in Livingston before. You know, in a lot of markets, 5 jobs doesn't sound like a lot, but you know, in Livingston, 5 jobs is a lot. Mm-hmm. And so if we approach everything, look at different markets related to scale, how many new jobs can we create? How many new jobs would have an impact? What are the resources we have to work with? How can we generate results that develop that scale and create opportunities for people?
Well, do you think that part of it, the initial problem is changing the mindset of the person controlling that particular food operation from the status quo of just of getting as much food as possible for as cheap as possible to your higher quality foods like you're producing?
You know, Ashley, that kind of, I think, circles right back around to our economy. You know, when was the last time you saw an ad for a food purveyor? McDonald's, Arby's, any of the big advertisers that mentioned one time quality, local sourcing? What is the first thing you hear? You know, McDonald's, you can get 5 hamburgers for $1. And, you know, Ashley, where's the beef coming from that's making those hamburgers? Who knows?
I have no.
But the reason the McDonald's and most other advertisers advertise that way is that we as consumers have created this situation. We think we can go to McDonald's and buy a hamburger for $1, or we can go to Walmart and buy a shirt for $1, or a pair of shoes for $20, or whatever. You know, we're driving this as consumers. And it's not going to change the economic equation of these companies, the financial situation of these companies, until they can demonstrate to their stockholders that there is money to be made in quality. You know, McDonald's, for instance, isn't going to raise the minimum wage of their workers to 15 or 17 or whatever it might be dollars until, you know, it makes me crazy when I see people, you know, workers picketing McDonald's. You know, we demand $15 an hour. Well, McDonald's doesn't care what they demand. What they care about is what their consumers demand. And their consumers are demanding $1 hamburgers. So McDonald's does the math and they say, well, we can't pay these people that much. The only thing that's going to change that is when we as consumers go to McDonald's and we've got signs that says, McDonald's, pay your people $17 an hour and we'll pay $5 for a hamburger. When was the last time you saw consumers doing that? We're not going to change that structure until consumers are willing to do that. And we've got to bracket our entire economic system accordingly. We've got to get real about consumption. You know, consumption in this country drives 75% of our economy. The money we spend buying stuff.
Yeah.
So until we change the mindset of all that consumption.
Yeah, this is a
it's gonna be
timely,
tough.
yeah, and that, you know, that is one of the gifts of COVID is it's really providing an opportunity for folks to, you know, look at where their food comes from and support all the organizations and businesses that are dedicated to trying to turn that narrative boat around, for sure. Tom, are you active on your call? I'm just curious if you wanted to check in from your perspective through your farm.
Hi, Robin. Yeah, I'm here. We were listening, learning a lot, soaking it in, honestly. The food hub in Billings is a co-op, so we're that weird, like in between a nonprofit and a for-profit, but trying to do a lot of this kind of work, still just finding our footing and learning how we want to do it, but trying to tackle a lot of the same kinds of issues as a co-op instead of one of the other models.
Right. And do you do any processing there at the food hub yet? Or is that planned?
No, not yet. And obviously, like, beef processing has been a big issue for a lot of our members for years, and especially this year. One of the things we're dealing with, we're still kicking around other kinds of processing, like what Root Cellar did in Bozeman. You know, those kinds of things would be fantastic down the road. Honestly, just not sure how a lot of that works out financially in the long run as we're learning. But yeah, processing meat or otherwise, I think, is kind of the missing step in a lot of the conversation. We've got a lot of growers and a lot of consumers, but how do we put it together?
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. And Todd, I think you were on this call, so correct me if I'm wrong, but we had a prior conversation with distributors, or no, we had a prior conversation with market farmers, but one of the market farmers is a member of Western Montana Growers Co-op, and she was sharing how at one point Western Montana's Growers Co-op got into the processing business, and because, you know, intellectually it makes a lot of sense, but that over time they've decided not to pursue it, and I didn't quite understand all the reasons. Oh, I think it had to do with just not being successful in marketing the processed vegetables, which seemed I was curious about. But
I think it came down, I think it was more the issue of cost, and that let's say you're taking a cabbage and then you're spending all this time to process it to turn it into shredded cabbage. Well, the price for shredded cabbage, people aren't willing to pay that much more for shredded cabbage than they were cabbage. Whereas like what Michael's doing, he's not buying in wheat and then grinding it and selling it as flour. He's buying in wheat, grinding it, milling it, baking it into an end product. And then that end product is worth significantly more than the wheat. And I feel like that's been the issue with food processing, is you're not adding enough value in the end product to pay for the processing. So you almost have to leap ahead to like prepared meals or a finished product rather than just one step. It's kind of my thought on it.
I see. Okay, well, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Todd. Thank you. That's maybe what I'm learning just in the last week or two with these Arrow calls is farther down the processing road makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just curious, Sue, if that's your experience with, you know, the goat cheese versus, I don't know if you sell the goat milk or anything else, but, you know, yeah.
We're not allowed to sell goat milk.
Oh, right. Yeah. Sorry.
We only make cheese, but you know, we have seconds carrots, and in the Bozeman area, organic, I don't know, my son decided to blend it, and he's selling carrot juice right now for $5 a pint. And you know, there's some places in the state where that'll go, but he can't make it. You know, he sells what he makes. So it's a quick processing. You know, I obviously have a commercial kitchen. Yeah, he's juicing, excuse me. And you know, that's been how he's used up his seconds carrots, you know, the ones that look a little funny that you can't sell in stores or whatever. So we're not, you know, I think Bozeman's a really unique market, and it's there are also a lot of people who appreciate farmers and what we do, and they actually thank us. So, you know, when we put in the pandemic cheese sale, people were jumping to help us. It was just an awesome thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I am happy to continue the conversation. I just looked at the time and realized it's 6:30. The session is technically supposed to end at 6:15. I'm delighted with the dialogue and be happy to stay on and support more conversation. And I want to create a space for folks to, you know, gracefully leave if they have other obligations and or they want to leave for any reason. So I just wanted to create that space, and you know, and also this is a very rich topic. So
Thank you for all our speakers,
thank you, Mark.
and thank you for Arrow for putting on this expo.
Thank you, Arrow.
Yeah, thank you. Well, okay. We'll continue it at another time then.
You guys can stay, but I need to go.
Okay, bye-bye, Mark.
Yeah, I've got to jump off too, Robin. Thank you very much.
Okay, you
Thanks,
bet.
everybody.
Take care.
Thanks, Michael.
Yeah, thank you. I probably got to go too. Thank you, Robin, again. We'll see
You bet.
for-
Thanks, Tom.
We'll probably see you tomorrow.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Robin. I'm gonna go eat dinner.
Okay, enjoy.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Robin.
You bet, Ashley. Take care. Talk soon.
Okay.
Uh,
I always like
Todd,
when
do you have a second?
I
Sorry, what?
Michael more.
I know. Well, I just decided I'm going to see if I convince him to. We're launching a food summit education series, and I think I'm going to. He may have had one whiskey too much, or I don't know, but I'm going to ask him if he will talk, because I really want to explore this multiplier effect. You know, stacking enterprises at a community level. There has to be. I don't know if there has to, but I think it's worth a conversation on.
When you pitched your questions, I don't know that he heard the whole question, but
No, he clearly didn't. You
it
know.
made me wonder. It's like clearly we've had passionate people in the community for 50 years, 30 years,
Mhm.
right? So we have passionate people, yet trying to build an integrated system doesn't seem to happen, right? There's a farm here and a restaurant there, and we're doing better, but like just trying to figure out like what is preventing us. Is it that the passionate people are not in the positions to affect change? You know, like the chefs who kind of have decision-making authority aren't passionate, but other people are passionate. It's like, is it just we don't have the right people in the right places? Or what I was trying to ask him is it just a lack of a champion? Is it lack of investment? Like we have all these ideas, but nobody can afford to build a building or buy a building or rent a building, and so nothing happened. It's like, what is the critical piece? Because I feel like we're coming up with a plan or a vision, but like what is needed to make it happen?
Yeah, I agree. And I don't know, but it seems to me that there's an aspect to what he's doing that should be able to be translatable at the community level.
Well,
that also provide.
That's the thing, is I feel like what he's doing is plug and play. It's like, there it is, there's your model, go do it here. And it's like,
Yeah.
Why aren't they? Like, is it the people who are in the position? I mean, it's why I started to engage with Jesse at Whitefish. It was like, why? Like, what are your plans? Are you aware of Michael? Do you see what he's doing? Does that make sense? Maybe they have their own, I mean, and that was where the whole board issue came up. And they had their own vision, but like, it seems to me, Michael's done the hard work of figuring it out. So why aren't people tripping over themselves to mimic what he's doing?
Yeah. So that, with respect to food pantries, is a mindset thing, you know. And that is, well, you know, I don't know. Maybe it just all has to do with with all of our mindsets. Yeah, I agree with you. He's done the hard work, and I'm also just curious. You know, and how to create that in a context with for-profit businesses so that they can, you know, benefit from that multiplier effect and economy of scale.
Well, I always think in terms of for-profit. I mean, maybe I share a similar background to Michael, but not to say that groups can't affect change, but I feel like individuals, like you look at Bob Quinn doesn't ask people for permission before he starts a new business. He just, as a person, makes the decision and starts a business. Michael has revolutionized the food pantry, but I don't think he did it as a group. I think he championed the cause and he made it happen as an individual. So I do believe there is a simplicity and a power in acting as an individual. And I think that plays into a for-profit business, like, or maybe it's, I don't know. Today I was thinking of that quote I gave you the other day about, you know, you can either pay the farmer a fair wage, you can have affordable food, or you can have good, nutritious food. And I was thinking about that and I was like, you know, that's just one equation. You know, why can't you pay a farmer a fair price and have an affordable price? So what's in the middle of that is there's a retailer who's taking a 40% markup to resell the food. And it's, how about you combine for-profit with nonprofit? And what if you could raise funds or grants or donations to pay for the overhead of retailing that food? You pay the farmer, you know, that's a different model. And granted, you're now dependent on donations. So maybe it's not as resilient, but
that's what he's doing. You know, he's got technically a for-profit business that that is helping run the nonprofit business.
What I'm thinking of is like, imagine having a food hub that's for profit, but somehow there is a nonprofit component in there that is helping take the pressure off of one piece of it, right? Like, okay, the donations are going to help cover the overhead of the facility. Therefore, the retailer only has to mark up the food 10%. They don't need 40%. And not because the community has invested in the retailer, the farmer can have a good price and the consumer can have a fair price, and you've checked all three boxes.
Yeah, I think so. I think the takeaway regarding that comment, that quote, and that statement is, it's a true statement if we all act as individuals. But if there's a way to stack the enterprises in some way, such as the one you're describing, and there's some collaborative effort there, somehow you need that.
Yeah. But again, I look at this food hub idea and I'm like, okay, I'm going to champion the cause and I think it's going to work. And I think this is part of a system. And then I think, well, what's preventing me? It's like, is it lack of capacity to take it on? Partly, is it lack of capital? Yeah, I mean, especially in whitefish, that is not a cheap prospect of finding a storefront, you know? So in another community, if I was in Havre, I probably would have done it by now, right? I'm sure real estate, but I don't know. Trying to pin down like what prevents it from happening. Cost, risk, bandwidth. Something to ponder.
It's definitely something to ponder because it hasn't been solved yet. So, but
No.
yeah. All right. Well, food for future thought.
Yep. Until next time.
Until next time. All right. Have a good evening.
Good night, Robin.
Good night.